Just moments from now, President Biden will give his first State of the Union address, and he will put a lot of weight on America's response to the Russia-Ukraine war. He'll probably highlight the sanctions that he's placed on Russia and the impact that those sanctions have had so far on Russia's economy. And he may even mention his latest action on Russia, that is banning Russian air travel from coming here to America. So that's something he also may mention. But aside from this focus on the Ukraine-Russia war, Biden will also focus a lot on his domestic agenda, namely how to get through this next phase of the pandemic and return back to normal. He's also expected to lay out a new plan for tackling mental health. This is something the White House sent out earlier today, Biden's new plan for addressing the mental health crisis in America. So he's expected to address Congress about this particular topic tonight. And he'll also lay the groundwork for his plans for tackling inflation. Now, one idea Biden has had for handling inflation is to push Congress to pass the CHIPS Act. That would increase our manufacturing of those semiconductor chips and at least lower the cost for things like new cars, which use those semiconductor chips. So he'll urge Congress to pass that piece of legislation. Another idea that Biden has continuously had for inflation is the Build Back Better bill. So he is expected to again mention that tonight, that this is his preferred solution for tackling inflation. And he's expected to talk about at least urging Congress to pass the Build Back Better bill, or at least pieces of it, because we know the White House and congressional leadership has been trying to pass at least pieces of it because that whole bill is stalled in Congress right now. So if we pay attention to the language that Biden uses when he talks about this Build Back Better bill, we can probably catch some of his key priorities, some of his must-passes that he's really going to push Congress to pass over the next couple of weeks and months. So that's also something to look out for tonight. Now, this is a big moment for Biden right now. He's slipping in the polls. Only 40% of Americans approve of his performance in office right now, while 54% of Americans are disapproving of his performance in office. And that's according to the latest CNN poll. So Biden's speech tonight does come under a lot of pressure right now, and he's really going to use this opportunity to rally Democrats into the midterms. So we'll hear from Biden in just a couple of moments, but for now, let's listen to what lawmakers are anticipating from his speech tonight. Here joining me is Congressman Ralph Norman from South Carolina. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
My pleasure.
So I first wanted to ask you about the COVID restrictions being lifted. We've seen leading up to the State of the Union address that mask mandates have been lifted. Tonight, you guys have unlimited seating for lawmakers. Do you think that this timing of relaxing these restrictions is intentional, or do you think it's time? What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, the Democratic Party is run by polls, and the polling has been against them. And it's ironic that it coincides with the State of the Union. Now, they're putting every other seat and spacing us out, but, you know, I'll let the public decide, is it just coincidence? I think the public is against it. I think that we're still getting frisked as we go in, the magnetometers, to make sure we don't shoot anybody. But no, it's I would think it's timed for purpose. They do everything for show and for. They need all the help they can get as far as public support, and they think taking a mask. A lot of us just, if they required a mask, I wasn't going to go. So I think they needed some people there, and so the mask's coming off, and that's a good thing.
Do you expect there's going to be a full House tonight?
Well, they're requiring most of the Republicans to sit in the balcony, which is, I've never seen that before. The years since 2017, I've never heard of it. But they're making all of us go there. I assume they will get their people, all the Democrats and their friends, inside on the floor level. So we'll see.
All right, so about gas prices. This is something that's heavy on the minds of Americans right now. We've hit a 7-year high for gas prices. Biden will surely address this tonight. How do you expect him to speak about this?
What Biden has done in the past is just words. He'll try to explain it away that it's a crisis, a global crisis. No, it's man-made. He shut the Keystone Pipeline. He shut oil down from Canada. He shut oil down from Alaska. He's buying oil from the Russians, which is waging genocide on their people, on the Ukrainian people. So I think he'll probably try to explain that. But how's he explaining everything else? The supply shortage. How's he explaining the fact that illegals are coming across the border, terrorists included? How's he explaining Afghanistan? I don't know how he can gloss this and make it sound rational to the American people.
So so last question I wanted to ask you is about kind of hope for the American people, because right now there's so much division, especially between the parties. Congress is gridlocked. Some people would say, thankfully, Biden's Build Back Better can't get through the Senate. But at the same time, I think Americans are kind of looking to Congress thinking nothing can get done here. Things are stalling and they have real problems that need to be addressed. Do you have a message of hope to the American people on areas that you guys can work together, both parties can come together and find solutions?
Here's what I would hope, and State of the Union is meant for a president, both Democrat and Republican, to express their vision, express their hopes for the American people, an uplifting message. And my hope that he would say, we are going to be energy independent, we're going to bring back manufacturing to America, we're going to close the borders, we're going to support law enforcement, we're going to support America, and we're calling on Americans to have the courage, as we see in Ukraine, the courage to do the right thing. I call on him to have the courage to do the right thing. And words are not going to get it. He's got to have a bold action plan. If you're judging from the past, it'll be excuses. Probably blame a lot of it on Trump and just another rambling reading of the material if he gets through it.
Now, okay, I was going to ask you that last question, but you just mentioned U.S. manufacturing. So he's, of course, going to address inflation tonight. And one of his proposals for handling inflation is to pass that CHIPS Act, to get that Competes Act through Congress. This is something that has garnered bipartisan support to produce manufacturing of those semiconductor chips, because there is a supply shortage with those. Do you think that this will address inflation? And of course, more needs to be done. So what are your thoughts?
But just singling out the chips is like, pulling sand out of the ocean. There's thousands of other issues he needs to address. The only way you're going to get inflation down is making us energy independent. We're driven by natural gas and oil. If you think about it, everything that's provided to the American taxpayer comes either by truck, rail. I haven't seen too many battery-run airplanes. And so that's what's going to have to bring in, he's going to have to not listen to the socialist left and do the right thing for the country, which is energy independence and bringing manufacturing back. The chip is just one of many. I'm in the real estate business. We can't find product to build a simple house, from water heaters to copper pipe. He's outlawing all of the natural minerals in Arizona and in Wyoming that we depend on. So it's going to take a lot more. And on a bright note, hopefully he will address it. That's why I'm going. I'm going to be attending, and we'll see if he does.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, the Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court. Madam Speaker, the President's Cabinet.
President of the United States. President of the United States.
Like the flag.
Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States. Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you, General. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Please. Thank you so much. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, members of Congress and the Cabinet, Justice of the Supreme Court, my fellow Americans. Last year, COVID-19 kept us apart. This year, we're finally together again. Tonight, we meet as Democrats, Republicans, Independents, but most importantly, as Americans, with the duty to one another, to America, to the American people, to the Constitution, and an unwavering resolve that freedom will always triumph over tyranny. Thank you. 6 days ago, Russia's Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, He met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people. From President Zelensky to every Ukrainian, their fearlessness, their courage, their determination literally inspires the world. Groups of citizens blocking tanks with their bodies, everyone from students to retirees to teachers, turned soldiers defending their homeland. And in this struggle, President Zelensky said in his speech to the European Parliament, "Light will win over darkness." The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She's bright, she's strong, and she's resolved. Yes, we, the United States of America, stand with the Ukrainian people. Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving, and the cost, the threats to America and America to the world keeps rising. That's why the NATO alliance was created, to secure peace and stability in Europe after World War II. The United States is a member, along with 29 other nations. It matters. American diplomacy matters. American resolve matters. Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. We prepared extensively and carefully. We spent months building coalitions of other freedom-loving nations in Europe and the Americas, from America to the Asian and African continents, to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying our European allies. We shared with the world in advance what we knew Putin was planning and precisely how he would try to falsify and justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable, along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others, even Switzerland, are inflicting pain on Russia and supporting the people of Ukraine. Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been. Together, along with our allies, we are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks from the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access. To technology that will sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come. Tonight, I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who bilked billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. The United States, I mean it. The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy. He has no idea what's coming. The ruble has already lost 30% of its value. The Russian stock market has lost 40% of its value, and trading remains suspended. The Russian economy is reeling, and Putin alone is the one to blame. Together with our allies, we're providing support to the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom. Military assistance, economic assistance, humanitarian assistance. We're giving more than $1 billion of direct assistance to Ukraine, and will continue to aid the Ukrainian people as they defend their country and help ease their suffering. But let me be clear, our forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose, we have mobilized American ground forces, air squadrons, ship deployments to protect NATO countries, including Poland, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And as I've made crystal clear, the United States and our allies will defend every inch of territory that is NATO territory with the full force of our collective power. Every single inch. And we're clear-eyed. The Ukrainians are fighting back with pure courage. But the next few days, weeks, and months will be hard on them. Putin has unleashed violence and chaos. But while he may make gains on the battlefield, he'll pay a continuing high price over the long run. And a pound of Ukrainian people, the proud, proud people, pound for pound, ready to fight with every inch of energy they have. They've known 30 years of independence, have repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. To all Americans, I'll be honest with you, as I always promised I would be. A Russian dictator invading a foreign country has cost around the world. And I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy, and that we use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers. Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America will lead that effort, releasing 30 million barrels of our own strategic petroleum reserve. And we stand ready to do more if necessary, united with our allies. These steps will help blunt gas prices here at home, but I know news about what's happening can seem alarming to all Americans. But I want you to know we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. While it shouldn't have taken something so terrible for people around the world to see what's at stake, now everyone sees it clearly. We see the unity among leaders of nations, a more unified Europe, a more unified West. We see unity among the people who are gathering in cities and large crowds around the world, even in Russia, to demonstrate their support for the people of Ukraine. In the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment, and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. This is the real test, and it's going to take time. So let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron will of the Ukrainian people. To our fellow Ukrainian Americans who who forged the deep bond that connects our two nations. We stand with you. We stand with you. Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom, and he will never, never weaken the resolve of the free world. We meet tonight in an America that has lived through two of the hardest years this nation has ever faced. The pandemic has been punishing, and so many families are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep up with the rising cost of food, gas, housing, and so much more. I understand, like many of you did. My dad had to leave his home in Scranton, Pennsylvania to find work. So like many of you, I grew up in a family when the price of food went up, it was felt throughout the family. It had an impact. That's when one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan. Because people were hurting, we needed to act, and we did. Few pieces of legislation have done more at a critical moment in our history to lift us out of a crisis. It fueled our efforts to vaccinate the nation and combat COVID-19, delivered immediate economic relief to tens of millions of Americans. It helped put food on the table. Remember those long lines of cars waiting for hours just to get a box of food put in their trunk? It cut the cost of health care insurance. And as my dad used to say, it gave the people just a little bit of breathing room. Unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind. Folks, and it worked. It worked. It worked. We created jobs, lots of jobs. In fact, our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America. The economy grew at a rate of 5.7 last year, the strongest growth rate in 40 years. And the first step in bringing fundamental change to our economy that hasn't worked for working people in this nation for too long. For the past 40 years, we were told that tax break for those at the top and benefits would trickle down and everyone would benefit. But that trickle-down theory led to a weaker economic growth, lower wages, bigger deficits, and a widening gap between the top and everyone else in nearly a century. Look, Vice President Harris and I ran for office, and I realize we have fundamental disagreements on this, but ran for office with a new economic vision for America. Invest in America, educate Americans, grow the workforce, build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down, because we know when the middle class grows, the poor have a way up and the wealthy do very well. America used to have the best roads, bridges, and airports on earth. And now our infrastructure is ranked 13th in the world. We won't be able to compete for the jobs of the 21st century if we don't fix it. That's why it was so important to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I thank my Republican friends who joined to invest and rebuild America, the single biggest investment in history. It was a bipartisan effort, and I want to thank the members of both parties who worked to make it happen. We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. And look, it's going to transform America, to put us on a path to win the economic competition of the 21st century that we face with the rest of the world, particularly China. I told Xi Jinping, it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads, airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice. We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school. We're going to provide affordable, high-speed internet for every American, rural, suburban, urban, and tribal communities. 4,000 projects have already been announced. Many of you have announced them in your districts. And tonight, I'm announcing that this year, we will start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair. And folks, when we use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America, we're going to do it by buying America. Buy American products. Support American jobs. The federal government spends about $600 billion a year to keep this country safe and secure. There's been a law on the books for almost a century to make sure taxpayers' dollars support American jobs and businesses. Every administration, Democrat or Republican, says they'll do it, but we're actually doing it. We'll buy America to make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it, all of it. But folks, to compete for the jobs of the future, we also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. That's why it's so important to pass the Bipartisan Innovation Act sitting in Congress that will make record investments in emerging technologies and American manufacturing. We used to invest almost 2% of our GDP in research and development. We don't now. China is. Let me give you one example why it's so important to pass. If you travel 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, you'll find 1,000 empty acres of land. It won't look like much, but if you stop and look closely, you'll see a field of dreams, the ground on which America's future will be built. That's where Intel, the American company that helped build Silicon Valley, is going to build a $20 billion semiconductor megasite. Up to 8 state-of-the-art factories in one place. 10,000 new jobs. And in those factories, the average job about $135,000 a year. Some of the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world to make computer chips the size of a fingertip that power the world in everyday lives. From smartphones, technology, the internet, technology that's yet to be invented. But that's just the beginning. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, who is here tonight, I don't know where Pat is. Pat, there you go, Pat, stand up. Pat came to see me and he told me they're ready to increase their investment from $20 billion to $100 billion. That would be the biggest investment in manufacturing in American history. And all they're waiting for is for you to pass this bill. So let's not wait any longer. Send it to my desk, I'll sign it, and we'll really take off in a big way. And folks, Intel is not alone. There's something happening in America. Just look around and you'll see an amazing story. The rebirth of pride that comes from stamping products made in America. The revitalization of American manufacturing. Companies are choosing to build new factories here when just a few years ago they would have gone overseas. That's what's happening. Ford is investing $11 billion in electric vehicles, creating 11,000 jobs across the country. GM is making the largest investment in its history, $7 billion to build electric vehicles, creating 4,000 jobs in Michigan. All told, 369,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in America last year alone. Folks, powered by people I've met like JoJo Burgess from generations of union steelworkers in Pittsburgh, who's here with us tonight. Where are you, JoJo? There you go. Thanks, buddy. As Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says, it's time to bury the label Rust Belt. It's time to see the what used to be called Rust Belt become the home of a significant resurgence of manufacturing. And with all the bright spots in our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel. I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted, but the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. So you didn't have people making those beams that went into buildings because they were out. The factory was closed. The panic also disrupted the global supply chain. Factories close. When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores, and prices go up. Look at cars last year. 1/3 of all the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up, especially used vehicles as well. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. Folks, that means make more cars and semiconductors in America, more infrastructure and innovation in America, more goods moving faster and cheaper in America, more jobs where you can earn a good living in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. Look, economists call this increasing the productive capacity of our economy. I call it building a better America. My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit. 17 Nobel laureates in economics said my plan will ease long-term inflationary pressures. Top business leaders, and I believe most Americans support the plan. And here's the plan. First, cut the cost of prescription drugs. We pay more for the same drug produced by the same company in America than any other country in the world. Just look at insulin. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. In Virginia, I met a 13-year-old boy, the handsome young man standing up there, Joshua Davis. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every single day. Insulin costs about $10 a vial to make. That's what it costs the pharmaceutical company. But drug companies charge families like Joshua and his dad up to 30 times that amount. I spoke with Joshua's mom. Imagine what it's like to look at your child who needs insulin to stay healthy and have no idea how in God's name you're going to be able to pay for it. What it does to your family, but what it does to your dignity, your ability to look your child in the eye, to be the parent you expect yourself to be. I really mean to think about that. That's what I think about. You know, yesterday, Joshua's here tonight, but yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way. For Joshua and 200,000 other young people with type 1 diabetes, let's cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month. So everyone can afford it. And drug companies will do very, very well, their profit margin. While we're at it, I know we have great disagreements on this floor with this. Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs. They already set the price for VA drugs. Look, the American Rescue Plan is helping millions of families with Affordable Care Act plans to save them $2,400 a year on their health premiums. Let's close the coverage gap and make these savings permanent. And second, let's cut energy costs for families, an average of $500 a year by combating climate change. Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient and get a tax credit for it. Double America's clean energy production in solar, wind, and so much more. Lower the price of electric vehicles, saving another $80 a month that you're not going to have to pay at the pump. Folks, the third thing we can do to change the standard of living for hardworking folks is cut the cost of child care. Cut the cost of child care. Folks, if you live in a major city in America, you pay up to $14,000 a year for child care per child. I was a single dad for 5 years, raising 2 kids. I had a lot of help, though. I had a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister that really helped. But middle class and working folks shouldn't have to pay more than 7% of their income to care for the young children. My plan would cut the cost of child care in half for most families and help parents, including millions of women who left the workforce during the pandemic because they couldn't afford child care, to be able to get back to work, generating economic growth. But my plan doesn't stop there. It also includes home and long-term care, more affordable housing, pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. All these will lower costs to families. And under my plan, nobody, let me say this again, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in new taxes. Not a single penny. I may be wrong, but my guess is if we took a secret ballot in this floor, that we'd all agree that the present tax system ain't fair. We have to fix it. I'm not looking to punish anybody, but let's make corporations and wealthy Americans start paying their fair share. Look, last year, like Chris Coons and Tom Carper and my distinguished Congresswoman, we come from the land of corporate America. There are more corporations incorporated in America than every other state in America combined. And I still won 36 years in a row. The point is, even they understand they should pay just a fair share. Last year, 55 of the Fortune 500 companies earned $40 billion in profit and paid 0 in federal taxes. Now look, it's not fair. That's why I proposed a 15% minimum tax rate for corporations. And that's why And the G7 and other meetings overseas, we're able to put together, I was able to be somewhat helpful, 130 countries agree on a global minimum tax rate. So companies can't get out of paying their taxes at home by shipping jobs and factories overseas. It'll raise billions of dollars. That's why I propose closing loopholes for the very wealthy who pay a lower tax rate than a teacher and a firefighter. So that's my plan, but we'll go in more detail later. We will grow the economy, lower the cost of families. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this done. We all know we've got to make changes. Folks, and while you're at it, confirm my nominees for the Federal Reserve, which plays a critical role in fighting inflation. My plan will not only lower costs and give families a fair shot, it will lower the deficit. The previous administration not only ballooned the deficit with those tax cuts for the very wealthy and corporations, it undermined the watchdogs, the job of those to keep pandemic relief funds being wasted. Remember we had those debates about whether or not those watchdogs should be able to see every day how much money was being spent, where was it going to the right place? But in my administration, the watchdogs are back. And we're going to go after the criminals who stole billions of relief money meant for small business and millions of Americans. Tonight, I'm announcing that the Justice Department will soon name a chief prosecutor for pandemic fraud. And look, I think we all agree, thank you. By the end of this year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office. The only president ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. Lowering your cost also meant demanding more competition. I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism. Capitalism without competition is exploitation. It drives up profits. When corporations have to compete, their profits go up and your prices go up when they don't have to compete. Small businesses and family farmers and ranchers, I need not tell some of my Republican friends from those states. Guess what? You got 4 basic meat packing facilities. That's it. You play with them or you don't get to play at all. And you pay a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more because there's only 4. See what's happening with ocean carriers and moving goods in and out of America. During the pandemic, about half a dozen or less foreign-owned companies raised prices by as much as 1,000% and made record profits. Tonight, I'm announcing a crackdown on those companies overcharging American businesses and consumers. And folks, and as Wall Street firms take over more nursing homes, quality in those homes has gone down and costs have gone up. That ends on my watch. Medicare is going to set higher standards for nursing homes and make sure your loved ones get the care they deserve and that they inspect and they will look at closely. We're also going to cut costs to keep the economy going strong and giving workers a fair shot, provide more training and apprenticeships, hire them based on skills, not just their degrees. Let's pass the Paycheck Fairness Act and paid leave. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and extend the child tax credit so no one has to raise a family in poverty. Let's increase Pell Grants, increase our historic support for HBCUs, and invest in what Jill, our First Lady who teaches full-time, calls America's best-kept secret, community colleges. Look, let's pass the PRO Act. When a majority of workers want to form a union, they shouldn't be able to be stopped. When we invest in our workers and we build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out together, we can do something we haven't done in a long time. Build a better America. For more than 2 years, COVID has impacted every decision in our lives and the life of this nation. And I know you're tired, frustrated, and exhausted. That doesn't even count the close to 1 million people who sit at a dining room table or a kitchen table and look at an empty chair because they lost somebody. But I also know this, because of the progress we've made, because of your resilience and the tools that we have been provided by this Congress, tonight I can say we're moving forward safely back to more normal routines. We've reached a new moment in the fight against COVID-19, where severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year. Just a few days ago, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new mask guidelines. Under the new guidelines, most Americans and most of the country can now go mask-free. And based on projections, more of the country will reach a point across the next couple of weeks. And thanks to the progress we've made in the past year, COVID-19 no longer need control our lives. I know some are talking about living with COVID-19, but tonight I say that we never will just accept living with COVID-19. We'll continue to combat the virus as we do other diseases. And because this virus mutates and spreads, we have to stay on guard. And here are 4 common sense steps as we move forward safely, in my view. First, stay protected with vaccines and treatments. We know how incredibly effective vaccines are. If you're vaccinated and boosted, you have the highest degree of protection. We'll never give up on vaccinating more Americans. Now, I know parents with kids under 5 are eager to see their vaccines authorized for their children. Scientists are working hard to get that done. We'll be ready with plenty of vaccines if and when they do. We're all ready. We are also ready with antiviral treatments. If you get COVID-19, the Pfizer pill reduces your chances of ending up in the hospital by 90%. I've ordered more pills than anyone in the world has. Pfizer is working overtime to get us 1 million pills this month and more than double that next month. And now we're launching the Test to Treat initiative. So people can get tested at a pharmacy, and if they prove positive, receive the antiviral pills on the spot at no cost. Folks, if you're immunocompromised or have some other vulnerability, we have treatments and free high-quality masks. We're leaving no one behind or ignoring anyone's needs as we move forward. On testing, we've made hundreds of millions of tests available, and you can order them for free to your doorstep. And we've already ordered free tests. If you already ordered free tests tonight, I'm announcing you can order another group of tests. Go to covidtest.gov starting next week, and you can get more tests. Second, we must prepare for new variants. Over the past, we've gotten much better at detecting new variants. If necessary, we'll be able to develop new vaccines within 100 days instead of maybe months or years. And if Congress provides the funds we need, we'll have new stockpiles of tests, masks, pills ready if needed. I can't promise a new variant won't come, but I can promise you we'll do everything within our power to be ready if it does. Third, we can end the shutdown of schools and businesses. We have the tools we need. It's time for America to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again with people. People working from home can feel safe and begin to return to their offices. We're doing that here in the federal government. The vast majority of federal workers will once again work in person. Our schools are open. Let's keep it that way. Our kids need to be in school. With 75% of adult Americans fully vaccinated and hospitalizations down by 77%, most Americans can remove their masks and stay in the classroom and move forward safely. We achieved this because we provided free vaccines, treatments, tests, and masks. Of course, continuing this costs money, so I'll not surprise you. I'll be back to see you all. And I'm going to soon send a request to Congress The vast majority of Americans have used these tools and may want again. We may need them again. So I expect Congress, and I hope you'll pass that quickly. Fourth, we'll continue vaccinating the world. We've sent 475 million vaccine doses to 112 countries, more than any nation on earth. We won't stop because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases. You know, we've lost so much in COVID-19. Time with one another. The worst of all, much the loss of life. Let's use this moment to reset. So stop looking at COVID as a partisan dividing line. See it for what it is, a god-awful disease. Let's stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other for who we are, fellow Americans. Look. We can't change how divided we've been. It was a long time in coming. But we can change how to move forward on COVID-19 and other issues that we must face together. I recently visited New York City Police Department days after the funerals of Officer Wilbur Mora and his partner, Officer Jason Rivera. They were responding to a 9/11 call when a man shot and killed them with a stolen gun. Officer Moore was 27 years old. Officer Rivera was 22 years old. Both Dominican Americans who grew up in the same streets that they later chose to patrol as police officers. I spoke with their families, and I told them that we were forever in debt for their sacrifices, and will carry on their mission to restore the trust and safety of every community deserves. Like some of you that have been around for a while, I've worked with you on these issues for a long time. I know what works. Investigating crime prevention and community policing, cops who walk the beat, who know the neighborhood, and who can restore trust and safety. Let's not abandon our streets or choose between safety and equal justice. Let's come together and protect our communities, restore trust, and hold law enforcement accountable. That's why the Justice Department has required body cameras, banned chokeholds, and restricted no-knock warrants for its officers. That's why the American Rescue Plan that you all provided $350 billion that cities, states, and counties can use to hire more police, invest in more proven strategies. Proven strategies like community violence interruption, trusted messengers, breaking the cycle of violence and trauma, and giving young people some hope. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police, it's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them. Fund them with resources and training. Resources and training they need to protect our communities. I ask Democrats and Republicans alike to pass my budget and keep our neighborhoods safe. And we'll do everything in my power to crack down on gun trafficking, of ghost guns that you can buy online, assemble at home, no serial numbers, can't be traced. I ask Congress to pass proven measures to reduce gun violence. Pass universal background checks. Why should anyone on the terrorist list be able to purchase a weapon? Why? Why? And folks, ban assault weapons with high-capacity magazines that hold up to 100 rounds. You think the deer are wearing Kevlar vests? Look, repeal the liability shield that makes gun manufacturers the only industry in America that can't be sued. The only one. Imagine had we done that with the tobacco manufacturers. These laws don't infringe on the Second Amendment. They save lives. The most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and have it counted. And look, It's under assault. In state after state, new laws have been passed. Not only to suppress the vote, we've been there before, but to subvert the entire election. We can't let this happen. Tonight I call on the Senate to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, pass the John Lewis Act, Voting Rights Act. And while you're at it, pass the Disclose Act so Americans know who's funding our elections. Look, tonight, I'd like to honor someone who dedicated his life to serve this country. Justice Breyer, an Army veteran, constitutional scholar, retiring Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Breyer, thank you for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean it. Get up, stand, let them see you. Thank you. And we all know, no matter what your ideology, we all know one of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has is nominating someone to serve on the United States Supreme Court. As I did 4 days ago, I've nominated the Circuit Court of Appeals, Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of our nation's top legal minds, who will continue in Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence. A former top litigator in private practice, a former federal public defender, from a family of public school educators and police officers. She's a consensus builder. Since she's been nominated, she's received a broad range of support, including the Fraternal Order of Police and former judges supported by Democrats and Republicans. Folks, if we're to advance liberty and justice, we need to secure our border and fix the immigration system. And as you might guess, I think we can do both. At our border, we've installed new technology like cutting-edge scanners to better detect drug smuggling. We've set up joint patrols with Mexico and Guatemala to catch more human traffickers. We're putting in place dedicated immigration judges, a significant larger number, so families fleeing persecution and violence can have their cases heard faster, and those who don't legitimately hear can be sent back. We're screening, we're securing commitments, and supporting partners in South and Central America to host more refugees and secure their own borders. We can do all this while keeping lit the torch of liberty that has led a generation of immigrants to this land, my forebears and many of yours. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those with temporary status, farm workers, essential workers. Revise our laws so businesses have workers they need and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do. That's why the immigration reform is supported by everyone from labor unions to religious leaders to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Let's get it done once and for all. Folks, advancing liberty and justice also requires protecting the rights of women. The constitutional right affirmed by Roe v. Wade, standing precedent for half a century, is under attack as never before. If you want to go forward, not backwards, we must protect access to health care, preserve a woman's right to choose, and continue to advance maternal health care for all Americans. And folks, for our LGBTQ plus Americans, let's finally get the Bipartisan Equality Act to my desk. The onslaught of state laws targeting transgender Americans and their families. It's simply wrong. I said last year, especially to our younger transgender Americans, I'll always have your back as your president so you can be yourself and reach your God-given potential. Folks, as I've just demonstrated, while it often appears we do not agree, and that We do agree on a lot more things than we acknowledge. I signed 80 bipartisan bills into law last year, from preventing government shutdowns, to protecting Asian Americans from still too common hate crimes, to reforming military justice, and will soon be strengthening the Violence Against Women Act that I first wrote 3 decades ago. And it's important. It's important for us to show the nation we can come together and do big things. So tonight I'm offering a unity agenda for the nation. 4 big things we can do together, in my view. First, beat the opioid epidemic. There's so much we can do. Increase funding for prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and recovery. Get rid of outdated rules and stop doctors prescribing treatments. Stop the flow of illicit drugs by working with state and local law enforcement to go after the traffickers. And if you're suffering from addiction, you should know you're not alone. I believe in recovery, and I celebrate the 23 million Americans in recovery. Second, let's take on mental health, especially among our children whose lives and education have been turned upside down. The American Rescue Plan gave schools money to hire teachers and help students make up for lost learning. I urge every parent to make sure your school does just that. They have the money. We can all play a part. Sign up to be a tutor or a mentor. Children were also struggling before the pandemic: bullying, violence, trauma, and the harms of social media. As Frances Haugen, who is here tonight with us, has shown, we must hold social media platforms accountable for the national experiment they're conducting on our children for profit. Folks, thank you. Thank you for the courage you showed. It's time to strengthen privacy protections, ban targeted advertising to children, demand tech companies stop collecting personal data on our children, and let's get all Americans the mental health services they need. More people can turn for help, and full parity between physical and mental health care if we treat it that way in our insurance. Look, the third piece of that agenda is support our veterans. Veterans are the backbone and the spine of this country. They're the best of us. I've always believed that we have a sacred obligation to equip those we send to war and care for those in their family when they come home. My administration providing assistance in job training, housing, and now helping lower-income veterans get VA care debt-free. And our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan have faced many dangers, one being stationed at bases breathing in toxic smoke from burn pits. Many of you have been there. I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan over 40 times. These burn pits that incinerate waste, the waste of war, medical and hazardous material, jet fuel, and so much more. And they come home, many of the world's fittest and best trained warriors in the world. Never the same. Headaches, numbness, dizziness. A cancer that would put them in a flag-draped coffin. I know. One of those soldiers was my son, Major Bo Biden. I don't know for sure if the burn pit that he lived near, that his hooch was near in Iraq and earlier than that in Kosovo, is the cause of his brain cancer, the disease of so many other troops. But I am committed to find out everything we can, committed to military families like Danielle Robinson from Ohio, the widow of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. He was born a soldier, Army National Guard, combat medic in Kosovo and Iraq, stationed near Baghdad, just yards from burn pits the size of football fields. Danielle is here with us tonight. They love going to Ohio State football games. And they love building Legos with their daughter. But cancer from prolonged exposure to burn pits ravaged Heath's lungs and body. Danielle says Heath was a fighter to the very end. He didn't know how to stop fighting, and neither did she. Through her pain, she found purpose to demand that we do better. Tonight, Danielle, we are going to do better. The VA is pioneering new ways of linking toxic exposure to disease, already helping more veterans get benefits. And tonight, I'm announcing we're expanding eligibility to veterans suffering from 9 respiratory cancers. I'm also calling on Congress to pass a law to make sure veterans devastated by toxic exposure in Iraq and Afghanistan finally get the benefits and the comprehensive health care they deserve. And fourth and last, let's end cancer as we know it. This is personal. This is personal to me and to Jill and to Kamala and so many of you. So many of you have lost someone you love. Husband, wife, son, daughter, mom, dad. Cancer is the #2 cause of death in America, second only to heart disease. Last month, I announced the plan to supercharge the cancer moonshot that President Obama asked me to lead 6 years ago. Our goal is to cut cancer death rates by at least 50% over the next 25 years, and I think we can do better than that. Turn cancers from death sentences into treatable diseases. More support for patients and their families. To get there, I call on Congress to fund what I called ARPA-H, Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, patterned after DARPA in the Defense Department. Projects that led in DARPA to the internet, GPS, and so much more to make our forces more safer and be able to wage war with more clarity. ARPA will have a singular purpose: to drive breakthroughs in cancer, Alzheimer's and diabetes, and more. A unity agenda for the nation. We can do these things. It's within our power, and I don't see a partisan edge to any one of those 4 things. My fellow Americans, tonight, we've gathered in this sacred space, a citadel of democracy, in this Capitol. Generation after generation of Americans have debated great questions amid great strife and have done great things. We fought for freedom, expanded liberty, debated totalitarianism and terror. We built the strongest, freest, and most prosperous nation the world has ever known. Now is the hour, our moment of responsibility, our test of resolve and conscience, of history itself. It is in this moment that our character of this generation is formed. Our purpose is found. Our future is forged. Well, I know this nation. We'll meet the test, protect freedom and liberty, expand fairness and opportunity, and we will save democracy. As hard as those times have been, I'm more optimistic about America today than I've been my whole life, because I see the future that's within our grasp, because I know there's simply nothing beyond our capacity. We're the only nation on earth that has always turned every crisis we've faced into an opportunity. The only nation that can be defined by a single word: possibilities. So on this night, on our 245th year as a nation, I've come to report on the state of the nation, the state of the union. And my report is this: the state of the union is strong because you, the American people, are strong. We are stronger today. We are stronger today than we were a year ago. And we'll be stronger a year from now than we are today. This is our moment to meet and overcome the challenges of our time. And we will, as one people, one America, the United States of America. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Go get him.
Congressman Tom Tiffany, thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report.
It's good to be here, yeah.
Now, Congressman, tonight's a big night for President Biden. It's his first State of the Union. I'd like to ask you, though, what do you think the current state of our union is right now as we speak?
It's weak, and our country, when I go back home and talk to people, they're very concerned about what is happening with our country, and are we going to be able to save the country? I mean, very fundamental questions that people are asking, and so they're deeply concerned. President Biden should try to assuage people's fears, and the only way for him to do that is to reverse course on some of the decisions that he's made in regards to energy. He should come out stronger in regards to crime, and he's got to reverse what's happening down on the southern border because it is doing so much harm to our country. I've been there 4 times now over the last year, and even in Wisconsin, we are now a border state.
There's a few things that you just mentioned I'd like to ask you about. One thing is when you talk about our southern border and this crisis that's taking place in Ukraine, do we run the risk of losing sight of these important things? Our own border is being breached on a daily basis. And you also have China, who's arguably the world's greatest threat. Are they lurking in the shadows? Could this be a distraction if we let it be?
So it's this culmination of things that are all going wrong that leads to the weakness in America. So a president and his administration should be able to multitask. They should be able to deal with the southern border, and they can do that very easily. All they got to do is reverse course from what they did on January 20th of 2021. They can make America energy independent once again, which we lost our energy independence in 1 year. In 1 year. They can just reverse course, and that will happen. But there is no doubt that China and our adversaries, and you're seeing what's happening with Russia. Do you think Russia would have done this with President Trump in office or President Reagan in office? They would have never done that. Weakness has led to war. And I'm waiting to hear from President Biden is how is he going to send a clear message that America is going to be strong? Because that message has not been there.
I want to ask you about energy and independence. This has been widely talked about. Like you said, we lost our independence in a year. How quickly can we gain it back, and what can we do to do that?
It could be regained real quickly. So President Biden is coming to my district, to Superior, Wisconsin, on Wednesday, tomorrow, right after the State of the Union. And there's a few messages he could send right away that would be very clear. Superior and Duluth, the Twin Ports, are an industrial town. Those are industrial towns, and they have a lot of infrastructure that all come together right there. Air, rail, ports, all those things come together right there. Pipelines right there in Superior and Duluth. There is a proposed natural gas-fired electrical generation plant that is being proposed in Superior. He should say, let's get that built. There's a refinery that is being rebuilt. He should say, let's get that rebuilt as soon as possible. There is a pipeline that is being proposed for a reroute just east of there, about an hour in Ashland County. He should say, let's get that done as soon as possible. And he should say to Governor Whitmer in Michigan, who's trying to shut down the rebuilding of the Line 5 pipeline that goes through the Mackinac Straits, he should say to her, Governor Whitmer, let's build that pipeline because it is so important for America's energy independence. He could send a clear message tomorrow. I don't know if he'll do that.
Congressman, what do you think is driving his energy policies? Is it the Green Lobby? Is it what is it? The progressive side of the party?
Progressives, environmentalists, they're all doing that. I refer to it as the green fantasy, that we can all of a sudden have affordable energy by having windmills and solar panels that only work 20% of the time, and that we're not going to use fossil fuels anymore. Fossil fuels, when we discovered them back in the 1800s in Pennsylvania, was at Spindletop. That was a gift from God, and it allowed us, by having affordable energy, to be able to spend far more on food, clothing, shelter, recreation. We get to spend more on those things that create a better quality of life because we have lower energy costs. So now what's happening? You see gasoline prices up, home heating prices are up. I mean, they're skyrocketing at this point. People are having to pull more money out of the checkbook and put into paying for those basics rather than being able to spend more money on the things that they would prefer to.
Congressman Tom Tiffany, thank you.
Great to be here.
Congressman Dan Bishop, thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Glad to be with you.
Congressman, this is a very historic day in American history. Usually, President Biden's first State of the Union address since taking office. I want to ask you, what do you think he's going to say, and what is the current state of our union?
I hope the president will explain that he's going to take a dramatic turn, because his policies have been destructive for the American people. We are in crisis after crisis. This is a State of the Union in crisis, really. And, the Ukraine war is only the most recent. But even as Americans across North Carolina, certainly in the rest of the country, are greatly concerned for the fate of the Ukrainian people as they face this onslaught from Russia, they're facing an onslaught of their own. They're living with the highest inflation in 40 years. And so every time they fill up a tank of gas, or they go to the grocery store, or every other thing they're purchasing to heat their homes, they're facing costs that make it harder to make ends meet, and that's never an easy thing to provide for a family and to provide for its economic success. And unfortunately, in so many ways, the Biden administration has been out of touch with reality, and they continue devotedly on these paths. So I think what the president needs to come in tonight and say is a recognition that he's made big mistakes, and that he needs to turn a new direction in order to move back from a country that's in crisis to one that's free and prosperous.
I think oftentimes with the politics, things sometimes get lost in translation when they finally make it to the American people, specifically on energy independence. That's essentially the ability for us to produce our own oil and gas. And do we have that ability, and what will that do? What are the policies that have changed? Explain that to us.
We did have that ability. The first and biggest change that American people need to see is that the Biden administration and the left in the country, Democrats, have had a mantra, a constant sort of policy notion that the development of fossil fuel, the availability of fossil fuel is a bad thing, that we need to move forward into a magically Green New Deal. And that's one of the, when I said sort of a failure to deal with reality, it's just the fact that renewables will not serve our energy needs. And the biggest, most useful development of the last 10, 15 years is that the United States achieved energy independence because of the availability of fracking, the ability to produce domestically for the first time really in my lifetime. The United States had the supply that it needed produced here. If we had continued growth in that, we've not. We've had, you're basically at the same level of oil production, but a lot of wells that are producing, one member's told me that about 20% of the wells only in his state of Louisiana are producing, that were producing when President Trump went out of office. And we have liquefied natural gas facility permits that are stalled at FERC. And so there's just a regulatory hostility to production of fossil fuel. Not only does it make the United States have less supply than we need, and prices tend to rise globally, it also has handed Putin a weapon. It has made Vladimir Putin stronger because gas prices are higher. Europe depends on that supply rather than a supply that could provide for the United States and provide for international allies. But so it's maybe the biggest way, the biggest single way in kind of this detachment from reality, this sort of wishing things were a certain way rather than dealing with the world as it exists, that has so disserved the American people and needs to change. And now, tonight would be a great time for it to start to change.
Congressman Dan Bishop, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman Joyce, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Great to be with you here today.
Now, Congressman, tonight we have the State of the Union address coming up by the President. Going into it, what are some of the biggest challenges you think the United States is facing?
I think that the State of the Union tonight should truly address that we are a state that is in dire need of leadership. We don't have that right now with Biden. I think Biden needs to come out and show the ownership of the highest inflation rate that we've had in 40 years, the fact that we've lost the energy dominance, that we are now importing 10% of our oil from Russia. the crises that occur multiple with the opioids that are coming across our southern border, the porous southern border that is allowing illegal immigrants to continue to come into our country, the lack of respect for human life, the lack of respect for the unborn. We are a nation in crisis. That should be the opening discussion in the State of the Union. And then Biden, to show true leadership, should step up and talk about solutions to these problems. But first and foremost, has to address those problems, the ability to work across the aisle and work with Republicans and Democrats alike to come up with solutions to help all Americans.
So, Congressman, it sounds like to me you're saying that there is a possibility for the president to have a successful State of the Union.
I respect the office. And I think at that office, we need to see true leadership. We have not seen true leadership so far. But coming out and addressing the problems that were created under the Biden administration, that has to be the foundation of what his presentation should be tonight. And then a game plan for how to work with Republicans and Democrats and solve those problems. We can do this. This is a great body. There are people who are here to work together. But we're not seeing leadership from the White House.
Now, Congressman, if you could unpack energy independence for us a little bit. It has multiple heads. It has the benefits of providing jobs in the U.S. It also has the benefit of national security, among other things. Tell us how important this is.
The energy dominance that we had under President Trump was so important. We saw that prices for energy were low. We saw access to energy and the ability to export energy to be so important. Right now, Russia is using energy as a currency. They're holding Europe because Europe is beholden to them for those energy supplies. We have the ability. I come from Pennsylvania, where we have natural gas, Marcellus shale, and coal. We have the ability to participate in that reclaiming of an energy dominance. That energy dominance will allow the United States to once again become a leader in the world. Putin is watching, but we have to make that response. We have to allow the permits for additional drilling to occur. We need to allow the Keystone Pipeline and other pipelines to be reopened. This is the time to show true leadership, and that is allowing the energy, the currency of energy, to once again come into play. Recognize that Putin watched what happened in Afghanistan, and he carefully planned this invasion to Ukraine. Xi in China is watching again, and I'm sure Taiwan is nervous right now. We need to have that strength. We need to have it on a national level, and we need to have it on an international level. We need to have that leadership. We need to have that leadership here at home, and we need to have that leadership on an international level. But using the currency of energy will allow us to support our friends, our NATO allies, with the energy that we are blessed with and we can plentifully supply to them.
Now, Congressman, I want to ask you, when it comes to Russia and China, do we run the risk of, or is there a way to prevent a more fortified relationship between those two countries?
I think we sever the ties by providing the energy to the world, that we can do that we show that by having that energy dominance, that none of our allies will have to reach out to Russia and realize that China is dependent on those supplies as well. China is using those coal supplies. A lot of that we can be able to supply to them. We can supply both thermal and metallurgic coal, not only to China, but to the world. We have those capabilities right here, right now in the United States.
Congressman Joyce of Pennsylvania, thank you.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Navigating a world of economic madness, you need to have the right guide. What do today's decisions mean for your tomorrow? We ask why. What's the alternative? Uncover the deeper reasons and the hidden influences, and highlight the real opportunities for profit. At Entity Business, we connect the dots for you. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
At The Nation Speaks, we don't just scratch the surface. We want to go wide and deep. our viewers come away with a much richer understanding of the issues of the day. We really make a big effort to bring on different voices onto the show. We don't just talk to experts and newsmakers, which of course are extremely important, but we also want to hear from the American people. So the people who are impacted by the policies and issues that we're talking about, because what they have to say is just as important to the national conversation.
So we just heard from President Biden, and every single point he made was expected. He made a couple of new announcements, and we're going to quickly go through a brief summary of what the president said and a couple of key takeaways from his speech. It lasted about an hour and a half, and he did at the top mention the Russia-Ukraine war and mention those sanctions that he placed on Russia and Russian President Vladimir Putin and what the severe consequences that those sanctions have. Biden also notably announced that he will be banning Russian flights from America. So that's some new action the U.S. is taking to combat this war going on in Ukraine right now. And on inflation, Biden really zeroed in a lot on lowering drug prescription costs or prescription drug costs. He focused a whole lot on lowering those costs and even urging Congress to allow Medicare and Medicaid to negotiate drug prices. So that was one of the main focuses in regards to inflation. He also mentioned cutting energy costs, his plan for cutting energy costs, cutting costs at the pump. And his plan was that he wants to invest more in clean energy projects, and that's his plan for combating the price at the pump. So I didn't hear anything else, any other new plan about his the way he's going to address the rise in energy costs. It was mainly just investing more in clean energy. So that was what we were waiting for, to hear from him, his plan for lowering that price at the pump, and that was it. And as for Build Back Better, so we noticed that he mentioned almost every single piece that was originally included in his Build Back Better bill. He's always argued that Build Back Better is his preferred solution to tackle inflation, but that this Build Back Better bill has been stalled in Congress for months now, and it's not looking like there's light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to this. So the White House is working on breaking it up into pieces to pass smaller pieces of it. So I was really hoping to hear from President Biden his key priorities from that Build Back Better bill. And he did mention some of those key priorities. He mentioned lowering the cost of childcare, investing more in childcare, lowering the cost of community college, making community college free, and expanding the child tax credit. But those are all like the main chunks of that original Build Back Better bill. So it doesn't look like much of a change in the messaging. Nothing really changed much there with his preferences, his priorities in the Build Back Better bill. It's still looking like he's trying to some way push through this whole package in some shape or form. Now, Biden also announced the pandemic recovery, that hospitalizations are going down, cases are going down. He sent a message of hope that we're turning the corner here and we're entering a new phase. We're returning back to the way things were pre-pandemic, and he did signal that, but he did say that he can't promise that we won't have another variant or another hiccup when it comes to the pandemic. So he did note that. But he also called for this, he also requested that more money come from Congress to address the pandemic. He made a new announcement tonight that Americans can now order more free tests from the government website, but then he followed that up by saying that this will cost money, though. This pandemic response will cost money, urging Congress to pass more pandemic relief money. That was also something notable that the president mentioned tonight. And President Biden also called for the pandemic not to be such a divisive area. He called for unity. He says that we should look at Americans not as enemies, but as fellow Americans, and called for the pandemic to be depoliticized, is the message that I got from his address there. Now, at the same time, Biden did take further action to break away from that defund the police narrative. He called for more funding for police again and again. He repeated it about 3 times, more funding for police. So it really shows that at this time when Democrats Biden particularly, is dropping in the poll ratings right now, he's really trying to decouple the Democratic Party from that defund the police narrative. Now, at the same time that he said that, he also pushed for his gun control agenda, which is something, of course, Republicans push back on, but this is one of his solutions for fighting crime, is his gun control policy, calling for universal background checks on guns. So he also pushed Congress to push forward with that. Now, he also mentioned at the end that more needs to be done, but that they're on the path, they're on the right path, getting things done, and he's urging Congress to move forward and pass that key piece of legislation. He ended by saying that he believes the State of the Union is strong. So now we're going to hear from the Republican response, which is Iowa's Governor Kim Reynolds.
Anti-energy policies which send gas prices to new heights, but they plowed ahead anyway, raising the price at the pump by 50% and pushing inflation to a 40-year high. 4 decades ago, when our nation was last reeling from inflation, I was a young working mom just starting out. My husband Kevin worked days while I watched our girls, and then we would literally switch. We would pass in the yard as he was coming home, and I was leaving to work evenings at the local grocery store. From across that checkout counter, I saw the pain of inflation on my neighbors' faces. I saw what happens when prices rise faster than wages. The Biden administration believes inflation is a, quote, high-class problem. I can tell you, it's an everybody problem. I saw moms and dads' paychecks buy them less and less. I watched working people choose which essentials to take home and which ones to leave behind. And now President Biden's decisions have a whole new generation feeling that same pain. When I took the oath of office 5 years ago, I promised Iowans that I would never lose sight of who I was working for, that I wouldn't become detached from the problems they were facing, from the problems that I had faced myself. But you don't have to check groceries to see what high inflation does to people. You just need to step outside of the DC bubble. Talk to Americans about what's on their mind. Ask them, what are your concerns? What keeps you up at night? And they'll tell you. And I can tell you what's not on that list. They won't tell you that spending trillions more and bankrupting their children is the answer to their problems. They won't tell you that we should be paying people not to work. And they certainly won't tell you that we should give billions in tax giveaways to millionaires and billionaires in Democrat-controlled states like California, New York, and New Jersey. But that's what the Biden administration has been pushing for over the last year. And that's all part of Build Back Better. Thankfully, the president's agenda didn't pass because even members of his own party said enough is enough. Well, the American people share that view. Enough is enough. And it's not just with DC spending. Americans are tired of a political class trying to remake this country into a place where an elite few tell everyone else what they can and cannot say, what they can and cannot believe. They're tired of people pretending the way to end racism is by categorizing everybody by their race. They're tired of politicians who tell parents they should sit down, be silent, and let government control their kids' education and future. Frankly, they are tired of the theater, where politicians do one thing when the cameras are rolling and another when they believe you can't see them, where governors and mayors enforce mandates but don't follow them, where elected leaders tell their citizens to stay home while they sneak off to Florida for sun and fun, where they demand that your child wear a mask, but they go maskless. So you've heard the excuses. They were just holding their breath, but it's the American people who are waiting to exhale, waiting for the insanity to stop. We now live in a country where violent crime is out of control. Liberal prosecutors are letting criminals off easy, and many prominent Democrats still want to defund the police. You know, it seems like everything is backwards. The Biden administration requires vaccines for Americans who want to go to work or protect this country, but not for migrants who illegally cross the border. The Department of Justice treats parents like domestic terrorists, but looters and shoplifters roam free. The American people are left to feel like they're the enemy. This is not the same country it was a year ago. The president tried to paint a different picture tonight, but his actions over the last 12 months don't match the rhetoric. It's not what he promised when he took office. But it doesn't have to be that way. There is an alternative. Across the nation, Republican governors and legislators are showing Americans what conservative leadership looks like, what it means to respect the people we serve, to hear them out, to stand up for them and walk alongside them. We know that our problems require bold action, but we also know that bold action doesn't have to mean government action. It's Americans making their own decisions for their own families and future. Republican governors face the same COVID-19 virus head-on. But we honored your freedoms and saw right away that lockdowns and school closures, they came with their own significant cost, that mandates weren't the answer. And we actually listened to the science, especially with kids in masks and kids in schools. What happened and is still happening to our children over the last 2 years is unconscionable. Learning loss, isolation, anxiety, depression. In so many states, our kids have been left behind, and so many will never catch up. That's why Iowa was the first state in the nation to require that schools open their doors. I was attacked by the left, I was attacked by the media, but it wasn't a hard choice. It was the right choice. And keeping schools open is only the start of the pro-parent, pro-family revolution that Republicans are leading in Iowa and states across this country. Republicans believe that parents matter. It was true before the pandemic, and it has never been more important to say out loud. Parents matter. They have a right to know and to have a say in what their kids are being taught. Families also have every right to live in a safe and a secure community, and that begins with a safe and secure country. But the Biden administration has refused to secure our border. They've refused to provide the resources to stop human trafficking, to stop the staggering influx of deadly drugs coming into our neighborhoods. They've refused to protect you. With Texas and Arizona leading the way, I, along with Republican governors from several states, have sent resources to the border. And we've actually gone to the border, something that our president and vice president have yet to do since taking office. On the economy, the contrast couldn't be more stark. While Democrats in D.C. are spending trillions, sending inflation soaring, Republican leaders around the country are balancing budgets and cutting taxes because we know that money spent on Main Street is better than money spent on bureaucracy. Today, I signed legislation that eliminates Iowa's tax on retirement income and sets our tax rate at 3.9%. That's less than half of what it was just 4 years ago. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that out of the top 20 states with the lowest unemployment rates, 17 have Republican governors. Republicans may not have the White House, but we're doing what we can to fill the leadership vacuum. And on the issues that are affecting Americans, Republicans are leading. We're standing up for parents and kids. We're standing up for life. We're keeping our communities safe and thanking those in uniform. We're fighting to restore America's energy independence, and that includes biofuels. We're getting people back to work, not paying them to stay home. Most of all, we're respecting your freedom. Behind me stands Iowa's Capitol, where we display our state motto, our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain. And those aren't just empty words. It's a belief that the greatness of this state and this country lies in our people, not government. You shouldn't have to wake up every morning and worry about the next thing the government is going to do to you, your business, or your children. If we as elected leaders are doing our job, then the government is working well, but operating in the background. It's supporting the ingenuity and spirit of our people, not drowning them out. It's keeping them safe, not restricting their freedom. That's what I believe, that's what Republicans believe, and that's what Republicans are doing. I am so blessed to be the governor of Iowa, where people are humble, hardworking, and patriotic. We take care of each other. And yes, we are, as they say, Iowa nice. But you don't have to be from Iowa to see that those are the values of America at its best. All of America. Over the last few years, I've put my faith in Iowans, and they haven't let me down. I encourage this president to do the same, to put his faith in you, the American people, who have never wavered in your belief in this country, regardless of who leads it. Because you know, you've shown that the soul of America isn't about who lives in the White House. It's men and women like you in every corner of this nation who are willing to step up and take responsibility for your communities, for your neighbors, and ultimately for yourselves. By that most important measure at least, the state of our union is indeed strong. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.